Morning, gentlemen. How are you?
How you doing, George? How you doing?
Good, good. Steve, how are you? Mike, how's your dad? I was thinking about him.
Doing good, man. He's all up and he's all happy now that the Yankees are in a World Series. But
Are you kidding? Yeah, man. That's what made me think of him. Like, oh, I know one man out there who's
he's
really
happy.
happy right
He's
now.
happy. He's also happy that he's also happy that they're not facing the Mets.
The dread Mets. I'm gonna grab a glass of water. One sec, guys.
Yeah, it's just the Yankees and Met fans have mostly a hate relationship. So going through a World Series with them would be pretty traumatic. But anyway, I'm sure the networks are very happy with what they've gotten. I mean, this is probably their dream matchup, right? They went the West Coast, East Coast matchup. I'm sure that's going to draw more viewers. And if it was just a New York series, I mean, they would be hurting in ratings.
Yeah.
They'd be
No,
hurting.
this draws everybody in. I think it's 64% of the United States population lives within 100 miles of either coast.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but that doesn't
I
surprise me.
mean, I could go and look it up. That's if memory serves, and sometimes it doesn't. Hey, Joe, how are you, man?
Yeah, gotcha.
Well, what's going on in everyone's world?
So, George, I'm about to. I have a meeting today with that architectural firm in New York that I've been working with remotely, right? So, I'm finishing up the deep dive into the 24 growth objectives. I've been through the first dimension with them. Today, I'm going through the last two dimensions with them, and before the meeting, I sent them the questions that they have to answer, and then I gave them some guidance on answering it, and the guidance I gave them said to answer yes to this question, meaning yes, I have this. You must have this. So I kind of did that for every one of the remaining 16 questions, so that when I get to them and have this meeting tonight, they kind of have some background. Otherwise, it gets kind of my experience with going through this is that a lot of people start asking, what does that mean, and what does partially true mean, and all this stuff. So it gets a little time consuming. I'm trying to cut them off
Especially
on it.
with a team.
And
Michael, you keep saying they. Are you doing this with the whole staff?
yeah, my apologies. Yes, there's 8 partners. I'm doing it with the partners.
And it's been going. I mean, I don't want to mischaracterize it, but it's been a really interesting experience. It's been going well.
Yeah, the first issue I had, and when you go through George's process, the growth drive process, is that I gave each of them separately the 24 questions to answer. And as you may have suspected, and will suspect, they were all over the place, right? There was no alignment. So we did an alignment. So George was kind enough to do a report and show them how they're all misaligned. So then I had to sit back down with them again and say, okay, guys, before we even go forward and doing anything here, we all have to kind of play from the same playbook, right? We all have to be on the same page. So let's go through these questions again and come to a consensus view on them. So I did that. That went okay, fine. And now I said, okay, now we're going to do a deep dive in each one of these dimensions. So I'm finishing that up today. And then, George, the culmination of that, right, will be, well, the output of that will be that strategic capacity report.
Yes.
Is that
The output will be a strategic capacity report, and I would suggest that you and I perhaps sit down and look at it, because there's a lot in there. That's a tidal wave of data coming in, and we want to make sure that they're ready.
Two things. George, your microphone's off a little bit today. It sounds like you're in a tunnel. And Mike, could you just give a little more flavor on how the discussion went, where you rationalized everyone's opinion?
Is this better, Steve?
It sounds like you're closer to us.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Now you sound like the guy
at
at the NFL Super Bowl, that voice, that guy who has that voice, which is like, whoa, where did they find that guy? Okay, so you're talking about the alignment workshop. Oh yeah, yeah. So it wasn't very contentious. I mean, people, a lot of people, when I pushed them to say, when I told them, let's come to a consensus on these answers. When I started going around, because I made them go around the room, and actually I said, well, you said, I had their names, and I said, John, you said yes to this question. Why do you think it's yes? And then I picked someone who said the opposite. Why did you think it was no?
Yeah, so while it's normally more often than not anonymized, Mike said, hey, these guys know.
Yeah, they're okay.
And Mike, maybe would you there are a couple of different cohorts inside the 8 partners, right?
Yeah. There's it's kind of there's 9 of them, not 8. So there's three folks that are in their 60s looking to retire soon. There's 3 in their 50s and there's 3 in their 40s. So you
Those
have
of you who are running CPA firms out there, pay heed.
yeah, well,
So
you
keep
know,
going,
it's
man. This is
yeah,
great.
so then I kind of pressed them on that. Tell me why. And then, you know, some folks would say, well, I didn't really understand the question that well. I just thought, you know, that's what it meant. And now that, you know, he said that and he said that, yeah, I think, you know, it's probably partially true. You know, it seems like, I guess the phrase here is that everything kind of regressed to the mean. You know, there were some people, yes and no, but then as you have these discussions, you know, everyone's kind of came to the conclusion like sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not true, you know. So, and I kind of thought this was going to happen, but not in every case, but in most cases, they say, look, I mean, both sides have a point here, but it's not absolutely true all the time. It's not absolutely false all the time. So we'll go with partially true. And a lot of times that was the result of that.
Thanks, Michael.
So now so George, when I finish, I'll have that report for them. And then, you know, and then I told them, I'm going to give you this report. Yeah, you and I may want to go through it, but, you know, I think the next step in my mind is that once I'm going to deliver a draft of it, and then we're going to discuss it, right? We're going to go through it. And then in my mind, that becomes the basis for their strategic planning, right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's prioritize what you want to do next, and let's start having, if they want me to, I don't know, you know, I don't know if they want to continue to work with me. I would hope so, but let's go through this and let's talk about, you know, what top 3 or 4 things do you want to not tackle first? And I suspect that's going to be driven by the software's ability to quantify the impact of the improvements the improvements to value that working on these things and making these things better has on value. So I would imagine they're going to look at the highest impact things first, right? You would think, and let's tackle them.
Michael,
Yeah,
what is their overall objective? Did you nail that down?
Yeah, their overall objective is to make their firm immortal in a way. In other words, they call it succession planning, right? Because they're concerned that once these 3 top people leave and retire, that they don't have the people available to step up. And also not only the people that are below them to step up, but also the continued ability, right, to recruit more people, to get more work, you know, just to make the business more, I use the word immortal, but just to make sure they can pass it on so that, you know, they're not leaving it, you know, bare with no foundation. So I'm looking, so, you know, when you look at all those 24 growth objectives, one of the things that they really have a problem with is senior leadership. That's jumping out to me. And they all agree. You know,
and immortal, by the way, is absolutely the correct term. I mean, that's the one we use. That's absolutely.
So I suspect that the first thing they're going to want to do is we have to take care of our senior leadership team. We don't have, we need more success. And I'm using their words, and I guess it's used in this context. They really don't have a solid succession plan to bring up and to mentor the next generation of leaders. And I think that's going to be one of the first things that they're going to tackle. Now, they have other issues, right? They, you know, being a professional service firm, you can imagine that each one of these partners, if they do any business development, have their own methodologies and they do it their own way, right? So Joe goes and he networks with this group. This guy, you know, spends time with his clients. Everyone has a different approach to business development, but there's no firm-wide approach, right? There's no system, there's no systematized or methodology that everyone tries to follow. And then so they don't have like a, you know, one of the questions, right, George, is do you have a, you know, a systemized sales process?
Sales process that's used by all. Yeah.
It's all individualized. Everyone knows what works for them, and they do it, right? And oftentimes they do it in isolation. They don't bring anyone with them, which is a problem with succession.
You know, it's fascinating, Mike. I would wager it'll be interesting to see if they stay the course and we end up in a weekly meeting in a series, a Monday morning meeting that's carried forward over time, in which we're looking at right here, let's zero in on the value of the marketing, marketing leads and the value of the sales funnel, and then how that relates up to revenues. It is going to be fascinating to see. I think it'll be interesting to see. I'm not trying to perjure the process.
Well, they also don't have any, they don't have a marketing person. They don't have any marketing. They have no marketing department. They have
But they're
nothing.
out there pitching, they're out there pitching design deals, and those design deals have a value. Those, in my experience, those meetings, if they stick with it, and it sounds like they will boil the bullshit out of that. Well, I'm going to close the Smith account, and that's $500,000. Well, then that just stays in the pipeline. It's like, hey, listen, man, you've been talking about the Smith deal for 8 months now. Does it really belong in this conversation? Where are they? What's happening? And how do we then standardize and quantify? It's going to be super interesting.
I mean, I'm working through it. It's really like a real live exercise. So, it's going. So you asked me what I'm up to. That's what I'm up to.
That's awesome.
I'm
thrilled for you. I'm thrilled for you.
Amongst other things, I would say that.
Yeah, because you're not sitting on your hands. Hey, you know what? It seems to me that perhaps this client, this is exactly why I'm so excited about 90, integrating the growth drive methodology into 90.io. And I know, Mike, you called me and expressed interest. Stay tuned, because stay tuned. But this would be a great way to say, hey, man, here you go. Here's the data. Everybody log in, check it out. It's, we democratize collaborative accountability and data. And it's going to be cool to see this. I love that they're so committed, or that they're committed to change. This is a really well-qualified client, and I'm happy to help in any way. After they have a question after they complete the deep dive, right? All 3 dimensions, I'd love to sit down with you and strategize about the best way, because given that you have 9 partners, what is the best information to deliver, how and when? Because that's a 72-page, that is a big, beefy report. And there's a lot of great stuff in there. How do we not, and I just had an idea we'll talk about offline. How do we not overwhelm them?
Well, you need an executive summary type of,
Oh, yeah.
You need an executive summary. And then you say, well, for further details, you consult the next 70 pages.
So actually, I'll just say it publicly, Mike. We have designed a level 2 report that is, think of it as the new level 1 report on steroids. And we have that. What I'd love to do, and at no cost to you, and what I'd love to do though is to take this case, and I will invest the time in taking this case and putting it manually into the new format.
Okay.
And that would be super helpful for me, selfishly, to be like, okay, let's think every block of this through. And in this case, does it tell the right story? And then that'll help me think about it, would this be a story? Because when you have the danger with a push button report, or with software that generates a strategic plan or an exit plan, is you have a one size fits most. And I guess that's true in life. But anyway, let's have some fun with it, man.
George?
I don't want to slow you down.
Thank you.
So sure, man.
I have a question for you. Not that I'm going to believe your answer, but so when is this new deep dive report going to be issued?
That's a great question. And not that I'm going to believe your answer. Have you worked in technology, sir? Well, we have the level 1 report is out there. Continuity is being released. I have not checked it this morning, but it is going to show up in the risk management button will show up in your dashboard, and you'll all know. We also are releasing a schedule of webinars to train you guys on it. And I'm not being a politician, Steve.
No.
So after that continuity report, we are going to start coding. So we're starting to code it kind of now, which is why I'm excited that Mike has a case, and Mike and I work together really well, unlike everyone else in the community. No, Mike, but I'd love to do this with you, Mike. And Steve, so we're starting to code it now. When will it be done? That is an interesting question. But if you look at this pace with which we're delivering new modules, new capabilities. Believe me when I tell you, it'll be pretty quickly. It'll be before Thanksgiving. Okay.
I'm not
there are
going to the
two-
bank yet, but I might get I'm in discussion with a client that needs this.
Well,
that's
and
my question.
you know me, I'm all about helping you move your engagements forward. So let's talk about it, Steve. You know, let's talk about it, Steve. Those of you watching this video, please call me. I'm happy to help. We're also getting C3D. We have the 16 classes. They're all written. Now I'm going through and making sure that there's a through line, right? That when we start at the beginning, that we don't lose, you will follow a case through so that it's logically coordinated, and getting rid of duplication. You know, duplication is a waste of your time. There are some concepts that will be reiterated throughout that. You know, you're going to hear a lot about the 3 dimensions of growth. It is a certification in the 3 dimensions of growth. So I got off on a little bit of a tangent here, Steve, but I am working 16 hours, give or take a day, on C3D. Well, working 16 hours a day, much of it on C3, because I've committed to you guys that we get it out the door. We will publish it. It's really, really, I'm really excited. I don't know if you'll be as excited as I am.
You're always excited, George.
Well, that's how I roll. Now, Steve, there are 2 other modules that are still, so I keep saying, you know, we have the hull of the ship. There are 2 additional modules that we're going to put inside. One is a simple, remember the workshop? Mike, you were in the room. Joe, I believe you were in the room when we talked about, okay, this is all fine. And we have a methodology, and inside the methodology, the process, we lay out the sprints. Well, not every client can tackle the sprints in this order, and we need to accommodate for them. And we have a workshop, which we kind of titled okay, well, what can this client do? And I did a blog post, and we had a workshop. We're going to code that workshop into the leadership module. Okay, so it'll be an additional, and again, guys, I'm not trying to, this is just one more arrow in your quiver. If you're like, okay, guys, I'm not quite sure you have what it takes to tackle these in order, in a logical order, or it may not be relevant to this case to tackle them in this order. Let's figure out, let's take the 8 growth driving objectives and sort out your current capabilities, your current skills, expertise, and the impact it'll have on attaining your goal. And now we can we can plot them and say, all right, well, maybe we shouldn't tackle X first. We should tackle Y, because we can get Y done while we build what we need, or get, or create, or bring in a consultant so that we can, so those are the types of client-facing exercises or workshops that we're going to layer a couple of those in. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I wanted to get back a question to Mike here. And I think, Steve, you were alluding to this, but what's the baby that's being born by all this effort with this architectural firm? What's the uniqueness that's being created because of them being together? And my go-to is always some sort of one-page strategic plan. Vern Harnish can be pretty complicated. Gina Wickman's made it a lot simpler, but somehow I think you need to have some document, Mike, that creates that alignment and on one page, and then you have all those other pieces that come because of that, the survey and how you're going to build it and to sell whatever, or internal sell. But I'm wondering if that, Steve, is that kind of what you're alluding to, is some sort of document that kind of pulls it all together? That's currently my choice, and I can do it all within 90. So it's just a thought to pull that together, and it's in that, it's all into that, it's all in the software package that 90 offers. So I'm not sure if that's helpful or not, or something to think about, because 8 people keep on coming back to that on a quarterly basis. You revisit that plan to say, okay, this is what we said. Is this still important? And it's the model that is taught by implementers for EOS.
And what EOS does is a bunch of, EOS is an internal look, and what we've
Right.
done so exciting is bringing in the private capital markets perspective.
Yeah.
And Joe, you make a good point. You know, the unique that we bring to, for example, a 90 implementation is you can access Clarity, our strategic capacity and business value analysis, directly. We've embedded it as an iframe inside 90. Now your clients can't log in unless you give them access. But we've really come as close as we can to gluing these things together so that the entire growth drive methodology and process down through execute guidance is in there. It's in there. And this is something new, and you'll learn about it in C3D, is the growth conversation. We have moved the strategic intent worksheet is in 90. So from our first conversation, we're touching an implementation tool. And why that's important, Joe, I want to come back to your one page. This is me on one cup of coffee and a good night's sleep. I'm sorry, guys. But what's important is considering that our vision is to increase strategic capacity for $1 trillion of private businesses, increasing strategic capacity in the 3 dimensions of business growth, that requires doing. That's why I'm so jazzed up about 90, which is a doing. So we're a measuring software and we're a strategy development software. And we also track execution as you're working with your client and you're improving their scores. You know, this would track the impact on value, new value, et cetera. That's great. But as to getting those scores to where we can bona fide click, that's completely true. We've reached that key result is where 90 becomes the information and accountability stream. I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, and I think the way to operationalize it is you work that issue, whatever that is, and then you get it to be XYZ company way, right?
Yes.
If you think about really trying to do, we're trying to create good habits and then track the habits on KPIs. What will happen over a period of time, the leadership team will tend to kind of meander to the neutral, or to at least to the easier way. And over a period of time, if it's just about the owner's value, right? If it's just about the owner's value that we're driving, it really becomes a dead issue. We as facilitators got to make sure that we keep the love alive. And what that looks like oftentimes is bringing in just not overwhelming them, but also making sure that they're getting juiced up by progress. And then a performance incentive plan, whatever that looks like related to the KPIs that they're trying to drive, help the owner understand that you need to reward these guys or gals for their efforts and keep the love alive, because this is a 3 to 5 year process. It takes a lot of energy to keep that machine rolling, and they'll have some early successes and then they'll fall off. And month number 13 or 14 is usually the real tricky one.
Let's go, Joe. Yes.
So if we're aware of that and we can talk through that at the beginning and middle and end of that time frame, we got to look at the energy level and who's an internal advocate. 8 architects. I'm working with a company now that has I think they have 6, but only 2 or actually 3 are in leadership ownership, right? So that whole transition piece becomes terribly important for those 3. And yet what everybody else is doing, so that's that, that's the reason why you bring someone in like us, is we bring genuine interest in value and energy to a situation. We could be that neutral party and help kind of, you got one primary owner, always that's most of the cases, and they're going to be the dominant voice in the room, and you have to just continue to push back and say, listen, we got to do this together.
Joe, you were spot on, and you just hit on something. There is such a thing as EOS fatigue. It's not a term I made up. It's a term that comes out of the market. And EOS fatigue has been described to me by some people who bloody well know as about 14 months. And the psychology is one very well-placed individual that explains to me is here's what happens. I go in and I implement and we start making real progress, right? Because doing something more organized and everybody being accountable to something is much better than what they were doing before. And it is good. I mean, what Gino created, what Vern created, these guys are not just smart, they're giants in our industry for a reason. Okay, so I'm not throwing shade, but doing something is better than doing nothing. And they get better and better at doing something and keeping score. And they're doing, because you're there as an implementer is not an advisor. An implementer is not an advisor. And if you go to the EOS website and look at, the role of the EOS implementer, it is there in
Process.
black and white, so to speak. No, you are a facilitator. Great. That's important skills. Great, important to do. But at about the 1 year mark, the CEO is like, we really got this. And it takes them a couple of months to work up the gumption to fire Mike to say, hey, man, we're good. Don't need to, we've got this. And now bring it around to your point, Joe, they don't got this. They're going to go back to their wicked ways. So
sorry to interrupt you, George. I have to log off. I have another call. I got to get on.
Okay.
But guys, it's always been a pleasure. I always get something tremendous out of these calls. It's invaluable. And thank you so much for your time.
Mike, man, I'm glad you're here today. And let's get together about your case.
Will do. Take care.
Awesome, man. Be well. Bye.
Bye. Sorry about that.
No, truth be known, I would love to reclaim a few minutes of my day as well, because 16 hours. But while I'm on this rant or screed, to use as advisors, we know that it's going to take 3 years. And how do we make sure that they maintain momentum over those 3 years? And I think our role as a business advisor, sure, it requires facilitation skills, which is why we have a facilitation course. But we need the time. And we are seeing this play out in engagements, which gets us back to qualifying clients. Like, this is why the growth conversation is so flipping important. And I'm such a freak about it. And we invest so much time in it, and why we want to get a tool, we want to get implementation onto the deck, in the first conversation. Okay. I wanted a bit of a rant. I'm sorry, but Joe, I'm in violent agreement. I'm with you.
Yeah, just to finish that up. So in most cases, you need to really start talking about that unique issue thing that team together is going to build. Is really build out a strategic one-page strategic plan, and that becomes evergreen. It keeps on coming back to it over and over again, and you can see over time how that changes and evolves with the team's involvement. So it's that process that keeps the love alive.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And what we see, and you've seen this, Joe, right? You have clients say, let's make this really easy. Hey, listen, Joe, man, I just want to make this business easier to run. Can you get some of this shit off my desk? Let's figure out how to delegate it with accountability I've got good people on my team. I can't work this hard anymore. Frankly, I'm on the edge of a divorce. When we do that work, when we implement dimension 1, how often does a client say, hey, wait, whoa, this is kind of fun. And you notice our revenues are up, Joe. And this changes, the psychology evolves, and the goal can evolve. And the one-page plan is a great way to say, okay, this is what you wanted. Did we have something to point at and say, do we still want this, or do we want something additional or different?
So just in that, I was poo-pooing Vern's Harnish's program, and then I started really looking at it closer. One of the things that it does on the quarterly basis is really and I really like this idea, is have a theme. And a theme creates alignment. It also creates energy. And whatever that quarterly theme is, that really helps as you're facilitating this team through this. Once again, it's not about the money. It's about alignment, and what we see that sells and keeps business at the selling table is your core beliefs and your core values, right? Culture. So if you're talking about culture being the most valuable, what evidence do you have that is aligned, and you're talking to a prospective buyer, you have these themes that you're going on, and everybody's juiced about whatever operational or sale, whatever it is. It's just that is evidence that you're going to have a more aligned company. So that's where I think that Vern puts it together, is that, core values is one side of the page, and the other side.
Done by the man himself.
Yeah,
You know,
so-
Joe, you make a really good point. And if anybody out there wants to know what a business with a killer culture looks like, take the level one, just the report tab on your level one clarity analysis, click on it, go down to the how would it feel to run a business where all of the answers are yes. And you
Yeah.
start reading, please read. You will only get halfway through. You're like, wow, any business that says yes to these, de facto, perforce I'm getting all my SAT words out here. Perforce has the kind of culture, winning culture. And who was I talking to yesterday? He's talking to one of your colleagues, and they're working with that kind of business. And he said, you walk in and the place is a buzz, right? The place is a buzz. And we've all walked into those. I walked into Bloomberg when they are on one floor in a Midtown Manhattan high rise way back in the day. I'm 90, yeah, whatever. And that place was like a beehive. And you walked in there, you knew they were going to win. There was no Comcast a long time ago was the same way. Joe, you're a culture. I just commented on Mark Abbott. Mark Abbott puts out his thoughts of the week, and my copy, I took it and riffed on it in LinkedIn, because culture is to a business what dark matter is to the universe, right? Culture is this intangible thing that holds the business together and can propel it forward. And culture's outward manifestation is brand. And so when we see a business with a really strong brand, you have to ask yourself, how did it come to represent such good to the market, right? Why does the market value that? And it takes a shitload. I'm swearing this morning. I apologize. It takes a heck of a lot of effort to get a box of screws on the shelf right where you want them at Home Depot, so that when you go into the app and it says in bin 8 on aisle 32, it is right stinking there. Think about what goes into that. So think about what goes into these three brave Americans in a tin can on top of a Titan rocket being shot into space. If you think about what actually went into getting that to happen, that's why that's over my shoulder. I've got a new one coming. All right, I'm gonna roll this.
Elon Musk was talking the other day about the design of the rocket, and it didn't have to be pointy. It didn't have to be pointy. It just looks cooler at a point.
But doesn't his have windows? I'm like, well, that's actually terrifying to me. Pull the curtains. Elon
But that
Musk.
thing coming back, I guess it was just spectacular to watch that rocket come back into orbit and then just get grabbed by that unbelievably forward thinking and
you're spot on.
ultimate recycling story, right?
And talk about the power of innovation and the
Right.
splash of innovation, and what one human with a vision, right? This man is driven to achieve his vision. If you read the book, Elon Musk, it's horrifying and fascinating and fantastic. It's horrifying in the early chapters. Tough childhood.
It's a testament to the people on the spectrum too, because
Yeah.
that's
The smartest people I know have a hard time functioning in society. They're far smarter. The fact that we all function really well in society is an indication of IQ. So, all right, listen, guys,
yeah, okay.
I'm
Get
gonna
your time back.
if it's okay with you, I'm gonna reclaim, a half an hour to me right now is incredibly valuable. So this has been a great conversation. Joe, go ahead, man.
I just got an email from Vern himself.
Oh, that's hysterical.
Hey, I'm going to send a note to Ed to request the access to the 90 growth drive combo. I guess that's what we're going to have to.
Yeah, it hasn't been, we haven't released it yet.
Okay.
I'm working with 90. We're going to do it in a very organized, we have enough people that if we don't do it in an organized fashion, what I don't want to be is be that partner to 90. I want to be the partner they want to point at as an example. So we are working behind the scenes to get this to you guys. The first will be a webinar it's already on the books. I just haven't invited anybody yet, and we'll take it from there.